All right, good afternoon, guys. So today we'll talk a little bit more and more in depth about the settlement and reconciliation function. Okay, now let's start with settlements first. Okay, now what is settlements? Can anybody tell me?
Exchange of securities for cash.
Okay, so when you talk about settlements, right? So this is the process, it's a process or it's a function of when actually the securities and cash exchange hands. Okay. Now, when we talk about settlements, it can be a security versus cash settlement, or it can be a cash versus cash settlement. Okay, for FX deals and swap deals. Okay. So that settlement is essentially what it is that is the actual delivery of the financial instrument and the money between the buyer and seller. Okay. Now, when we talk about the settlement process, okay, the settlement function is broken up into three sub functions. Okay. So the first function within settlements is what we call as pre-settlements. Okay, pre meaning before. So before settlements, what do you do? Okay, so what happens is that on settlement date, okay, the settlement teams contact their clients and they will confirm with them, hey, are you good to settle the transaction or not? Okay, so think of this as akin to you order something on Flipkart and the delivery guy calls you up and saying that, sir, madam, are you home so that I can deliver the product to you? Yeah. So that is what is pre-settlement. So essentially why you're doing this is that you're calling the client on like like in the morning to check with them whether the settlements, whether you can start the settlement process for them, because there could be situations where the client might have changed the details of of the delivery instructions, the SSIs. We spoke about this, right? The bank account number and custodian account number. They might end up changing it for various reasons, and we'll talk about that. Okay, so that's what you're doing is you're doing a call to make sure that, hey, are we good to settle or not? Okay, so once they say yes, okay, and why you should do pre-settlements, right, is it's going to save you a lot of time. It's going to save you a lot of time and it's going to reduce a lot of your mistakes. So once this pre-settlements are clear, basically you get a go ahead saying that yes, I'm good. Then we have the actual settlement, okay, where you actually will move the stock and cash. Okay, and then we have a post settlements. Okay, now what is post settlements is basically we're going to do the reconciliation or what we call as fails management. Okay, now what is fails management essentially means is that what if a trade did not settle on the settlement date? So your post settlement is essentially a reconciliation. You're reconciling to check whether the deal has settled or not. Now in case the deal has not settled, okay, then it's called as a failed trade and now we have to manage that. Okay, so again it's akin to the delivery guy coming, I mean calling your house for the for example pre-settlements. They call your house and check whether you're home or not. So if that is fine and you are at home, so they're going to come and deliver the product. So that's step two, settlements. Now post settlements is what? Reconciliation. So let's say you ordered a phone. Okay, then when you open up the phone, you see that it's a piece of rock in the box, right? So that is the reconciliation part. Okay. Now, what is fails management essentially is that you're going to find out why the trade did not settle, and then you have to get ensure that the trade settles. Okay. So that is the idea of what settlements does. Is this clear with everyone? Yes. No. Yeah. Okay. So think Amazon, Flipkart delivery guy calling you before to check whether you're home. That's your pre-settlement. The guy comes to your house. That's a settlement and delivers the product. When you open the product and you check whether that's what you received. So if that's what you ordered, okay, if that is what you ordered, so you're going to reconcile the products, sir. So let's say you ordered an iPhone. So you're going to ensure that what you ordered and what was delivered to you is the same thing. That is reconciliation. Okay. Now, in case you ordered an iPhone, but instead you got a piece of soap, right? A piece of soap, then the transaction has failed. Then you're going to call up Flipkart or Amazon, and then you're going to follow up with them to ensure that the transaction is settled or not, right? Yeah, so reconciliation is like reconfirming. Well, no, not after sales service, or it's not after sales service. It's, see, reconciliation, what you guys have studied BRS, right? Bank reconciliation statement in college. You're checking to make sure all the transactions are settled or not. That's it. Okay. All right. Take a minute, write this down, and then we'll move on to the next. So cash versus cash, right, Jackson, is essentially your FX deals, right? So I pay you, you pay me. So that's a cash deal. And let's say it's a swap, interest rate swap contract, yeah? So what is that? You exchange the cash flow. So I pay you cash, you pay me cash. That's what we mean by cash versus cash. Let me know when you guys have done right. Okay, cool. I think that's the maturity. Now, let's understand the next part, okay? Um, so, why does a trade fail? Okay, so what do we mean by a failed trade? First of all, is that it's a failed trade is a transaction that did not settle on the contractual settlement date. Okay, now for example, if it's a T+2 settlement, right? Now let's say on Monday I did a deal, on Wednesday it's supposed to settle. Now when I reconcile on Thursday, okay, because reconciliation will always be T+3, I don't see that the transaction has settled in my account, right? That's what we call as a failed trade. Okay. Now, what are the reasons why a trade will fail? Okay. Now, let me kind of give you guys a bit more view on this. Is that when we talk about the transactions that get done in an investment bank, right? They like let's say Goldman Sachs, right? Globally, right, they might do like I don't know. Well, when I was there in Goldman, right, we used to average around 100 to 150,000 equity transactions every single day, okay, on an average, okay, 100 to 250,000 equity transactions every single day, okay, and it could have been higher as well. In 2008 and all that, it was really, really very high, right? So the number of transactions were massive, okay, and maybe now, I've left Goldman now, it's been 8 years, so maybe the volume is even more, okay. Now, what happens is that it is physically impossible to monitor every single trade and every single transaction, and it is impossible to double check 100,000 or 200,000 transactions. Okay, so what you do is that you create a system. Okay, so let me tell you guys one thing, right? In terms of technology, right, investment banks, honestly, right, they have been at the forefront of technological evolution for many, many years. Okay, um, from using computer-based trading to then moving to algorithmic trading. I mean, they've just been pushing the technology bit quite hard. Okay, and that's where you get a lot of innovation. I remember this one story. In Goldman Sachs, New York, they created a new technology platform. Okay, and it was such an awesome system, right? That entire technology division, they spun out. Okay, you guys know what is a spin-off, right? And anyway, we'll talk about it later. But basically, that company, it's still owned by Goldman Sachs, but they ended up becoming an own separate company, and they started selling that technology to other market participants because that technology was so awesome. Yeah. So that is why, so when we look at this, right, when we talk about settlements and the reasons why I'm going to tell you why a deal is not settling, it might sound silly, but you got to understand that it's not possible to monitor and double check, triple check every single transaction. So what you do is that you set up your RDM, reference data management, properly. Then when the systems read that reference data management, it will go out to the market and it will match those details with the client details. And if it matches, transaction is settled. Okay, now because the transaction gets settled, right? It I would say 95% of it happens automatically. Okay, 90 to 95% of it happens automatically. But and the 5% that fails, right? 5 to 10% that fails is what operations does on a daily basis. You look at the stuff that you basically look at all the exceptions. Okay, you are the one who's going to look at the stuff that has broken down, and you are the one who needs to fix it. Okay, so on settlement date, transaction settle. On T+3, you reconcile whether it has happened or not. Okay, now those that don't happen are what we call as failed trades. Now, why do they fail? Okay, is that there could be incorrect settlement instructions. Okay, maybe the instructions got changed. Okay, now there could be incorrect trade economics, client missing instructions, counterparty does not have sufficient shares, counterparty does not have enough money, etc. So there can be a lot of reasons why a trade will not settle on settlement date. Okay, So, for example, counterparty, insufficient shares, counterparty, insufficient cash. All right. What else? Counterparty does not decays the trade. So when I joined Goldman, right, in my first few days, right, everybody was shouting DK, 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 and I'm like, what? Why is everybody saying DK? So when you hear DK, what are you hearing? You're hearing this, right? Yeah, DK, right? What they were actually saying was DK, and what this means is don't know. So I kind of felt really silly. Yeah, but each company has its own like language and all of that, and once you join, right, you will pick that up. But these are some of the major reasons why a trade does not settle on settlement date. Okay, are you guys understanding the idea behind this? Okay, so these are some of the reasons why trade fails. Okay, take a minute, write this down, and then we'll move on.
Sir, am I audible? Sir, am I audible? Wait, sir, one.
CP means counterparty. So Deepesh, what I was saying was that there are reasons why a trade will not settle on settlement date. So these are some of the reasons why it does not settle. So incorrect settlement instructions, trade economics, quantity, price, all of that is wrong. Okay. Uh, Okay, everybody done? Okay. Now, the next thing that we're going to talk about is these settlement for securities. Okay, so when we talk about settlement for securities, what we're talking about here is that how does the security transaction settle? So, for example, equity and fixed income, how they settle. Okay, now the three main ones, right, or the three ones, the three that are used in the market is what we call as a DVP, RVP, and FOP. Okay, so when we talk about DVP, what is it essentially? It is delivery versus payment. Okay, so and can you guys tell me what direction of the trade I'm going to be in if it is delivery versus payment? So I'm delivering the securities and I am getting paid for it. So what side of the deal am I on? Am I on the buy side or the sell side? Yeah, exactly. Sell side. Yeah. So delivering the security and receiving the payment. Okay. Then we have RVP. Okay, which is receipt versus payment, and that's for buy trades. Okay. Now both DVP and RVP is essentially the same. The securities and cash move at the same time. Okay. The cash and securities move at the same time. Okay. Now the third one is FOP. Okay. Now FOP stands for free of payment. Okay. Now it's not free, but what it means is that you deliver the security first and you will receive the cash by end of day. Okay. So delivery versus payment is sell trades, RVP is buy trades, and this happens at the same time. And FOP is free of payment. Is this clear with everyone? DVP, RVP, and FOP. Now, especially DVP and RVP, right, happens at the same time. So think about it this way: it's like cash on delivery, right? So until and unless, so let's say it's a sell trade for me, right? So if I don't have the shares, okay, so I want to sell the shares, I want to deliver the shares to you, and if I don't have the shares, will you pay me? EOD is end of day, Deepesh. Yeah, end of day. So, are you guys understanding my example? I have to deliver shares to you and you have to pay me. Now, will you pay me if I don't have shares? Exactly. You will not, right? Now, if it is a buy trade where I'm supposed to get the shares from you and I have to pay you, now if I don't have cash, will you deliver the shares to me? Exactly. So that is why with DVP and RVP, right? Until both of us have our positions in place. So if it is let's say DVP, and let's say that it's 10,000 shares, I have to have 10,000 shares in the account. Okay, and I have to be ready to deliver that to you. Okay, and once I have 10,000 shares and you have your money in place, then only the custodian, right, will move the shares and cash. Okay, is this clear with everyone with DVP and RVP? Okay, and free of payment is the security settles first. Okay, and cash by end of day. No, Sir Nash. So, short selling and intraday. So, short selling, what it is that you sell the security and you buy it back, and your net obligation to the clearinghouse is zero. But here, what I'm saying is that I deliver the shares to you in the morning, but you are going to pay me the cash for it by end of day. So it's like this, right? You take a delivery. Let's just say you bought something from your friend. Okay, let's say you bought a new phone from him or a watch or whatever it is. So he gives you the product in the morning, and you promise to pay him by end of the day. That's what is free of pay. Okay, take a minute, write this down, and then we'll move on. Okay, everybody else done? Okay. All right. So the next thing that we're going to talk about again is within the securities world. Okay. Now, do you guys know how many securities are listed? Like all the how many? Let me put it another way. How many listed companies are there in the world? That's what do you think? How many securities,
Sir,
listed securities are
sir,
there?
it's
Yeah.
sir, it's approx 6,30,000 companies.
Okay. Okay. 6 lakhs. Okay. I don't know. The number keeps varying. Okay, but for in India alone, it's somewhere around 11,000. I think PSC has around um, six or seven or somewhere around 8,000 or 6,000, and NSE has around three or four, three and a half thousand. Okay. Now, the idea with the next part that we're going to talk about is securities. They have different identifiers. Okay. How do you identify a security? Okay. Now, there are different names that are given, and those names are largely based on its popularity. I wouldn't say names, but the way they're used and all of that, and where it was created. Okay, so a lot of you might have heard of the term called as ISIN. Okay, ISIN. Okay, it stands for International Securities Identification Number. Okay, and this is a 12-digit alphanumeric number. Okay, so ISIN is one method. Now, ISIN is popular in Asian markets where most of the securities, right, have a ISIN code, right? The next one is what we call as QSIP. QSIP. That's it's pronounced it's CUSIP, but it's pronounced as QSIP. This stands for Committee for Uniform Securities Identification Process. Okay, and this is a 9-digit number. Next, you have what we call as CDOL, okay, SEDOL, and this stands for Stock Exchange Daily Official List, and this is a 7-digit number, okay. Then you have symbol and ticker, like INFI, FB, MSFT, all that as your symbols and tickers, and then you have a RIC code that stands for Reuters Instrument Code, okay. So, for example, Amazon.OQ, that is a RIC code. Now, it's your job. So let me also clarify. You just need to know what is ISIN, CUSIP, SIDOL, symbol, ticker, and RIC code. Okay. So these are 5 of the ways that are used to identify securities in the market. Okay. Now, for example, if you look at ISIN, right, the first 2 letters, it starts off with US. So that means that's a country code. Okay. And for India, it is IN. For UK, it is GP, like Great Britain. For Japan, it's JP. Um, what else? For France, it's FR. For Germany, it is GE. So all these, or DE, I think, yeah. So all these are country codes. Okay. Then you have a few digits which are the state or even the city that it's situated in, and it's the specific security. Okay, but so the goal is, and by the way, please don't sit and memorize how many ever ISNs are there are. It's not possible. So rather understand what are the different ways to identify a security. Okay, you have ISN, QSIP, SIDOL, symbol ticker, and RIC. Is this clear? Okay, take a minute, write this down, and then we'll move on. Okay. All right. Now I want you guys to do a quick, little bit. Sorry, not able to think properly. Um, I want you to quickly tell me and find out. Okay. What is the stock price and ISIN code for Tata Motors and Tata Motors DVR? Okay, can you guys just take 30 seconds? So I want the ISIN code for Tata Motors and stock price, and the ISIN code and stock price for Tata Motors DVR. Can you just quickly Google that and let me know? Sort of, I don't think that's Tata Motors DVR. And check again. No, so Bisuji, the ISIN has to be the same across both exchanges. You cannot have uh, two different ISIN codes for the same stock. Okay. Mm, okay. Maybe they've changed it. I don't know. Let me check. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, and I think the best place to get this is on an SE website. Okay, hang on. Let me show you guys. So if you go to the NSE website, right? So you have Tata Motors and Tata Motors TVR. So if you go to Tata Motors, right? So the ISIN is this INE 15 whatever 15. Hang on. See, this is why you guys should always go to the stock exchange. If you go to third party, right? The information at times could be wrong. Okay. And in real life, these guys would be fired. Okay, 107.25. Okay, now let's look at Tata Motors DVR. See, now if you look at the ISIN code, and what's the price? 42.15. Okay. Now, why this exercise, right? Is the ISIN codes are, or see, and you can do this same example for QSIP, CIDOL, it doesn't matter. Everything is but understand what I'm trying to say here is that as this ISIN codes, right? They're very important because at a front office level, now imagine a guy in front office, okay, a client places an order saying that I want to buy Tata Motors, okay. Now let's say if that guy is a fresher and doesn't know that Tata Motors has two listings, right? And client actually wanted this 107, but he placed an order for this, right? Now will the client be very happy with the guy in front office? Yeah. Yeah, a client will actually stop trading with the broker, right? So that's why it's important. So generally in front office also, right, it is the client's responsibility to send the right information. Okay, so direction, quantity, price, but name is equally important, right? So if they and let's say a client does not know, okay, if it's an international client, maybe they don't know that there are two listings for Tata Motors. So then if the trader is smart, right, and they ideally should be, what should they do? They should ask them, which Tata Motors are you talking about? Because I have one at 107, I have one which is DVR. Which one do you want? Okay. Now, why is this important from a back office or a settlement perspective? Is that when you talk about settlements, right, you are going to settle a transaction or a trade based on the ISIN code. Okay. Now, the probability of you hmm, settling a trade incorrectly. Now, let's say client knows Tata Motors and you have Tata Motors DVR. Uh, there's no way you can mess it up because the systems won't allow it. Okay, but it's very important from a settlement perspective to know to know which security you have to settle. Yeah, is this clear with everyone? Yeah. Like it's just to give you an idea of it, okay? Because a lot of this, it might not, once you start working, then it'll make sense to you. But um, stuff like this, right? Once you get practical experience, right? That's when you'll understand this. Okay, but please be clear is that when you join in your settlements and all that, let's say you go to a settlements interview, right? They can ask you what are the different security identifiers. So you have to say ISIN, QSIP, CIDOL, what does it mean? Give an example, etc. You need to know all of this. Okay. Okay. Cool. All right. Now let's look at the settlements for cash. Okay. How do so we looked at the securities leg of it. Now we will look at the cash side of it. Okay. Now when we talk about the settlements for cash, right? Um, what do we mean by this is that you are going to use a the central bank system to make payments. Okay. Now if you guys know, right, in India, what are the different ways you can send money? Okay, NEFT, RTGS, okay, IMPS, UPI, okay, fine. So these are largely what is there, okay, but for large for large transactions, right? What will you use? Do you guys know? No, Biswajit, yeah, and DD is a little old-fashioned, yeah, but Swift code for international, correct, Saurabh. But no, so actually for large transactions, right, you're going to use the RTGS system. Okay, it's RTGS. Now, RTGS stands for real-time cross settlement. Okay, so when we say that RT, real time, right, the cash moves instantly. Okay, so when we make payments to our clients, right, so in a securities transaction or even a FX transaction, right, you are going to be using the country's infrastructure, okay, to make payments to your clients because you have to use the banking system, right? So what we are going to, so now when we look at the settlements for cash, right, in the US, so in India, all of you guys know, it's RTGS and NEFT. Now stuff like UPI and IMPS, right, is more for us, the public and the individual. Okay, but for large transactions, for corporate transactions, for FX deals, etc., right, you use FX, and for slightly smaller deals, you'll use NEFT. Okay, now in the US, the RTGS. So let's understand one thing. As Indians, right, we're not super creative. Okay, so in the US, they call the RTGS system as FedWire. Okay, in India, we just named it as RTGS. We couldn't think. I mean, we generally don't think of cool names. Yeah, it's just sad. We could have named it something fancy, right? But in the US, it's called as FedWire. Okay. Now, when we talk about FedWire, right, it is for USD payments within the US. So these are for large transactions. You cannot cancel when it's been once it has been initiated, and it's real time and it's governed by the Federal Reserve. Okay, much very exactly like our RTGS system. Okay. Second one is what we call as chips. Okay, how many of you like chips? Now, chips not in terms of the British thing for fries, French fries, but potato chips. Everybody likes chips, so we will use chips to make payments. No, okay, sorry, silly joke. So chips stands for clearinghouse interbank payment system. Okay, now these are for small transactions and they are done outside of the US. Okay, now you got again, when I say small transactions, you can still process millions. You know, oh yeah, poker chips, yeah, that's also fine. Yeah, so when you say small transactions, right, I'm not talking like small amounts. You can still process like 100 million, 200 million dollar payments through chips. Okay. Now because USD is an internationally accepted currency, right? You will make payments using the chips platform. Okay. Now let's say that you're sitting in India and your client is based out in the US, and the deal is between, let's say, uh, Society General New York and Goldman Sachs London. Okay, so what you'll do is you'll use the chips system to make the payment from New York to London. Now, let's say you have a deal between SG New York and Goldman Sachs New York, then you'll use the FedWire system to make the payment. Okay, so that's your FedWire and chips. Okay, next, you have CHAPS. This stands for Clearinghouse Automated Payment System, and this is largely for the Euro and GBP payments. Okay, and then you have something called as Target 2. Okay, it's a long this thing. It's called as a Trans-European Automated Real-Time Gross Express Transfer. Oof, that's a long this thing, but short form is Target 2. Again, it's for making payments throughout the European Union. Okay, so these are the platforms that you will use to make payments. Okay, so it can be for security settlements as well as FX transactions. Okay, is this clear with everyone? Take a minute, write this down, and then we'll move on. So sort of it's the central bank, right? So in India, right, RTGS, NEFT, all of that, right, is always taken care of by the central bank or RBI. Yeah. Let me know when you're
Sir,
done.
please explain caps and target two again.
Yeah. So CHAPS is done for Euro and GBP payments, and Target Two is only for Euro payments. That's it. You just need to know the platform that it uses.
It's only for USA.
Sorry?
Only for USA.
No, I didn't understand. Say that again.
Sir, it's only for USA. मतलब transaction takes place only in USA or outside USA.
Uh, can you? I'm sorry, I'm not understanding your question. What do you mean? For which one are you talking about? Are you talking about Fedwire or chips or Target Two?
Chaps. Sir, chaps.
No,
Chaps.
CHAPS is only for Euro and GBP. So when you make payments to, let's say, within the European Union or to UK, the currency that you're paying, if it's in Euro or GBP, you have to use CHAPS.
And target two.
Is only on for Euro payments.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
No, so again, Anurag, chips is the system that's used to make payments outside the US. Okay, outward remittance is payment going out. That's it. But chips is this platform that's used. Okay, everybody else done?
Sir, chaps is only used by UK.
Yeah.
So, sir, all transaction takes place under the UK only.
No, in the
Means.
sense, if you're going to make payments in GBP, then you'll have to use the CHAPS network.
Okay, I can pay from India to UK, so we'll use chaps in payment of GBP.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
All right. Everybody else done? Okay, fine. Now, the next thing that we're going to talk about now, this is very, very specific to settlements, right? I mean, everything has been specific to settlements. But very important four things that you guys need to know about. Okay. Now, the first one is what we call as a buy-in notice. Okay. Buy-in notice. Okay. Now, what does it mean is that, now let's say that on settlement date, okay, I am supposed to deliver 5,000 shares to you. Okay, I deliver 5,000 shares to you, and for whatever reason, right, I am not able to deliver the shares. You're the buyer. I'm supposed to give you 5,000 shares. Okay, now since I don't deliver the shares to you, and what happens is that you can issue a buy-in notice to me saying that, Rakshat, if you don't give me the shares immediately, then what you will do is you will go to the market, okay, you will go to another broker and you will buy the shares from them, okay? And if it is more than the price that at which I bought for you, then I have to pay you the difference. Okay, so let me explain again. So you're the buyer, I'm the seller. Okay, I'm supposed to deliver 5,000 shares of Apple to you at, let's say, $300. Okay, now today is the day I'm supposed to deliver the 5,000 shares to you, but due to unforeseen circumstances, I don't deliver the shares to you. Okay, so what you can do is you can issue a buy notice to me saying that, Rakshat, if you don't deliver the shares in the next 1 or 2 days, the 5,000 shares to my account, then what you will do is you'll go to the market or to another broker, you'll buy the shares from them. Now, if you buy the shares at a higher price, so let's say you bought it at $310, with me it was 300, because the market moved up, you ended up spending more. So then what happens is that you can claim that difference. So basically, you're going to say that $10 into 5,000 shares is what I have to pay you. Okay, that's what we mean by a buy-in notice. Okay, the buyer sends a buy-in notice to the seller, and if not settled by settlement date, seller will have to pay the difference to the buyer. Okay, is this clear with everyone? So essentially, it's like giving a notice saying that please settle the shares. If you don't, I'll go to another broker, buy the shares. Now, if I buy it at a higher price, then you have to pay me the difference. Okay. So if there is a downside, right now, let's say that you bought it at 290, then I don't have to pay you because it ended up becoming cheaper. Yeah. So because it went down, right, 290, it becomes cheaper for you, right? So then I don't have to pay you. Only if the price goes up, because then you've incurred a more bigger expense. Okay. Now, the opposite of buy-in notice, we have another type of notice. We call that as a sell out notice. Okay. Now here, I am trying to deliver the shares to you. So I'm still the seller, you're the buyer. I am trying to deliver the shares to you, but you are not willing to take in the shares. We are not willing to take in the shares. So what I will do is I'll issue a sellout notice to you saying that, guys, if you don't take these 5,000 shares of Apple, what I'll do is I'll go to the market and I will sell the shares. Now, if it is less than the amount that I bought it for, I've incurred a loss. So that means you have to pay the difference. Okay. Now, if it is above the price that I bought it for, then it becomes a profit for me. So I don't have to pay you the, so then I don't have to issue the sellout notice to you. Okay. But you're buying a sellout notice, right? These are like strict actions that you're taking against a broker or a client to either get the delivery of the shares, or uh, well, basically taking the delivery of the shares, or refusing to take in the shares. Okay, buy notice and sell out notice. Is this clear with everyone? Okay, take a minute and write this down. Okay, what about the others? Okay, all right. Now, when we talk about some of the biggest changes, or let me put it this way, okay, is that when we look at what happened in the 2008 financial crisis, right? Uh, so generally regulations, right? They were more towards the sales and trading side, okay? Sales and trading side, and the guy there in front office, what if he does a scam, and how does it impact? And that's where billions can get lost, which is true, okay? But one thing that happened in the 2008 financial crisis was that uh, like not only the front office guys but also regulators, right? They understood what a critical role operations plays in the trade life cycle. Okay, so and there were not really that much rules and regulations for like the middle office and back office teams. They basically were there. Okay, so middle office does the risk management, back office does the settlement recon. No big deal, right? So you had your internal compliance teams and then audits that would manage the whole thing. But that was it, right? That was it. There was no really major regulatory oversight over all these things. Okay. Now, what happened is post 2008 financial crisis, um, the importance, so regulators finally kind of understood, wow, operations plays a massive role in all in the entire trade life cycle. And uh, and when you look at the OTC derivative market, it's not highly regulated, and and every time there's been a financial crisis, it stems or it gets started out in the OTC derivatives market, right? So what then they started thinking about, okay, you know what, how do we ensure settlements, we can guarantee settlements in OTC transactions, okay? How can we ensure that we minimize default risk, okay? So these were the conversations that were happening post 2008 financial crisis. So, and what they ended up doing, right, is they ended up creating what we call as a CCP, okay? CCP, which stands for Central Clearing Party, okay? Now, a central clearing party, right? They act as a clearing house for OTC trades. Okay, they act as a clearing house for OTC trades, and in order to avoid that, in order to avoid the default risk, right? What happens is that both parties will have to deposit collateral with the CCP in order to mitigate default risk. Yeah, is this clear with everyone? So a CCP is what? It's basically a clearinghouse for OTC transactions. Okay, and both parties have to deposit collateral. Now, the collateral, I think tomorrow we have collateral management as a topic, right? So we'll talk more about it then. Is that both parties, will deposit a collateral with the CCP in order to mitigate the default risk. Okay, so these are some of the big things in settlements. So for example, let's say you join an OTC derivatives team, right? So you will be working closely with your clients and counterparts, of course, but also with your CCPs, okay, because they are the ones who will guarantee the settlement. Is this clear with everyone? So if you guys remember, in financial system we said order settlement is not guaranteed in a quote driven market, right? Order settlement is not the thing. But post 2008 financial crisis, right, there has been a movement to make sure that all the OTC transactions are settled through a CCP. Now, let me also be clear is that not all OTC transactions are still going through CCP. Only the plain vanilla straightforward stuff is happening through CCP. Everything else is still managed between the client and broker. Is this clear with everyone? Buy notice, sell out notice, and CCPs. Yes, no? Okay, take a minute to write this down and then we'll move on. Okay, everybody done? All right. Now let's very quickly look at custodians, right? So when you are part of the settlements team, right, you're going to work closely with your custodians. Okay. Now, why do you work with your custodians? Is that so you will have so for example, right, Goldman Sachs will have a custodian, okay, and that custodian will interact with the client's custodian, and the custodians are the ones who will move the securities and cash. Okay, so we've already talked about this before, but when we talk about custodians, right, what do they really do is that they hold on to the client's assets, okay, in terms of both cash and securities. They do FX conversions for the clients, okay, and they also manage the corporate actions. Okay, now why will a custodian manage the corporate action? Why do you think they will manage the corporate action? Any idea? All of you fell asleep, kind of. Okay, so when we talk about why the custodian, yeah, that's what is a corporate action. But my question is, Saurabh, is why does the custodian manage the corporate action? Right, so see, now their custodian is not issuing bonus shares and right issues and all of that. It's the company that's doing it, right? So why does the custodian manage the corporate actions is because the stocks, right, are held locally. So if it's a financial institution, right, their stocks and they trade like a FII, if they trade here in India, right, those shares will be held here in the uh, local custodian. Okay, for example, let's say Standard Chartered Bank. Okay, it's a custodian, so they'll maintain the share. The shares will be held there. So anytime there is a corporate action, right, it's the custodian's responsibility to ensure that the corporate action takes place. Okay, now let's say that they have 1,000 shares of company ABC and they do a stock split. So it's the role of the custodian to manage the corporate action. Okay, so these are some of the roles that a custodian plays. Okay, they hold the client's assets, they do FX conversions for the clients, and they manage the corporate actions. Okay, take a minute, write this down, and then we'll move on to the last bit. Okay, all right. Now let's talk about the last part, which is reconciliation. Okay. Now, can anybody tell me why we do reconciliation? Generally, why do we do reconciliation?
We compare ledger with the statement.
Okay, comparing ledger with statement to know whether things went as planned and as directed. Okay, good. Okay. So when we talk about reconciliation, right? Well, yeah, the next step, Anurag, would be to rectify the mistake. So first is you do the reconciliation to find out if there are mistakes or not. Then you rectify it. Okay. So when you talk about reconciliation, right, it's to find out discrepancies between two sets of data. Okay. So when you say two sets of data, right, so you have a ledger, which is your book information, and you have a statement, which is your bank. Okay. So when you reconcile your ledger and statement, right, you're basically reconciling your book versus bank. Okay. That's just a simple example. Okay. Now, in a investment bank or any large financial institution, right, uh, reconciliation is probably one of the most important functions that can happen. Okay, uh, because if a transaction is not reconciled properly, right, it can cause massive financial losses to the company. Okay, so there are reconciliations that happen at a front office level, middle office level, back office level, and there's also a separate reconciliation team that will sit and reconcile everything within the trade flow as well. Okay, so let's talk about that now. Okay, so when you talk about reconciliation, it's broken up into internal recon and external recon. Okay, now internal recon, right, is first one we have is what we call as trade reconciliation. Okay, now, what is trade reconciliation essentially is that you reconcile the number of trades that have been done for the day. Now, if, for example, in front office, there are 100 trades, how many should there be in middle office and how many should there be in core operations? What do you guys think? So, front office have 100 deals that they have done. How much should be there in middle office and how much should there be in back office? Exactly, it has to be the same. Okay. Now, where the risk is that what if front office guy has done 101, but in middle office and back office you see only 100? Now, let's be clear that 98% of the time, right, it's going to be some, or 95% of the time, it's going to be a system issue. Okay, it's going to be a technology mistake or something like that. Okay, very rarely will it be a person doing a mistake on I mean, say let's say it's very rare that a person will want to defraud the company, right? So we know that we call that as insider trading, right? That's scam. So largely, right, when you do trade reconciliation, the reason why you're doing it is that you're reconciling the number of trades that have happened between front office and middle office and back office, and between front and back office as well. Okay. No, so Biswajit, it's not a lot of manual work actually, because the systems actually, right? You have reconciliation systems where they take the feed from a front office system, take the feed from the middle office system, and they'll match all the transactions. Okay, because see, there is no way you can do this manually, because you are reconciling literally thousands of trades on a single day. There's no way you can do this manually. So you have systems that do it. Now what happens is that the system will only throw up an error one only when it cannot reconcile the data. So if there is a deal in the front office system, there is not in the middle office system, then they say, hey, you know what, I found something in front office, but there it's not there in your middle office. This is what you need to check. Okay. So like I mentioned before, right? Operations is more of handling the exceptions. Okay. So that's your trade reconciliation. You're going to reconcile only the number of trades that have happened. Second one is what we call as position reconciliation. Okay. Now, in position reconciliation, you're going to reconcile the number of securities that are there. Okay. You're only reconciling securities, nothing else. So if I have 50,000 shares of Apple in my custody account, I'm going to reconcile that against my ledger. Okay. That's your position reconciliation. And finally, we have what we call as cash reconciliation. So we're going to reconcile all the cash entries. Okay, now the cash entries can happen on our bank account as well as our custodian account. Okay, now when we talk about the bank side, right? So we call this as a nostro account. Okay, or nostro reconciliation. Now nostro, I believe, is a Latin word meaning ours. Okay, so what is a nostro account? It's basically my account held in a foreign bank. So if I'm, let's say, Goldman India, and I open an account with Goldman Sachs New York, okay, or Citibank New York, or let me say Citibank. So I'm Goldman Sachs India, and I open an account in Citibank New York. That's known as a Nostro account. Okay, and what's a Vostro account? It's the opposite. It's Citibank New York opening an account with Goldman Sachs India. Okay, so these are the three major types of reconciliation. You have a trade reconciliation, position reconciliation, and cash reconciliation. Okay, now within this, right, these are broad classifications, especially in trade reconciliation. So here you can do exchange reconciliation, you can do so let's say middle office versus exchange. You can do back office versus stock exchange, or again CCP for OTC transactions. You can do front office versus middle office, front office versus back office, middle office versus back office. So all these reconciliations can take place. Okay, so these are your three major types of reconciliation: trade, position, and cash. Okay, is this clear with everyone? Take a minute and write this down, and then we'll move on. Okay. Okay. Now, when you talk about internal reconciliation, right? Um, Basically, your data is you're comparing internally. Okay, so your sources of information, right, is largely you're comparing an internal source with an internal source. Is largely internal reconciliation. Okay. Now the opposite of it obviously is external reconciliation. Okay. Now in external reconciliation, you have what we call as a broker reconciliation, where you're going to reconcile our trades against a broker trade. Okay. So what is broker reconciliation basically, right? Is that a go like for example Morgan Stanley and JP Morgan, right? They can act as brokers with each other, and their end client can be somebody else. Okay, so when they act as brokers against each other, right, commission is due, right, to each other, so that they have to collect from their respective clients. So that is why uh, after a transaction is done, right, they reconcile all the deals that they have done, and so that they can get paid their commission. Okay, that's what we call as broker reconciliation. Then you have custodian reconciliation, where you're going to reconcile both the stock and cash between your internal and external systems. Okay, so these are the two major ones: broker reconciliation and custodian reconciliation. Okay. All right. So this is pretty much it for reconciliation. Okay. And again, reconciliation, right, is super important because that's the only way that you will figure out if anything goes wrong, right? If anything is wrong or not. Okay. So again, broker reconciliation, right, is okay, let me give an example. So you have Morgan Stanley and you have JP Morgan. Both of them are acting as brokers on behalf of a client. Okay. Now let's say I'm the client, half of you are Morgan Stanley, the other half is JP Morgan. So what happens is that I, as your client, right? I give you deals to both of you guys. Okay. Now, what happens is that you guys will have to reconcile the deals between each other to figure out who should get paid the commission. Okay. And that you'll charge it back to me. Because sometimes, right, there will be a main broker, like a prime broker, and you will have sub brokers and other types of brokers, right? So the job would be that the prime broker would reconcile all the transactions and will pay the commission to all the other brokers as well. Okay, so that's the idea with broker reconciliation. You just reconcile the trades between both the brokers. Okay, take a minute, write this down. Okay, all right. I'll stop your recording.